Hey everybody, it's GauntletX and welcome back to some more Magic Arena. Today I'll be playing another premiere draft of the Innistrad Crimson Vow format, and we're going to start off with a pretty fun rare, Glorious Sunrise, 5 mana for an enchantment that gives you a bunch of options. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you get to give your whole field +1/+1 trample till end of turn, have a land, be able to tap for 3 green, draw a card if you control a creature with power 3 or greater, or gain 3 life. None of these abilities single-handedly would be worth the 5 mana cost to this card. However, the fact that it's versatile and you get whichever effect you need, 3 life if you're really on the back foot, card draw if you're looking to draw out of a board stall, or some mana ramp if you have something really expensive next turn, is pretty nice. So I do like Glorious Sunrise quite a bit. It might not be the best card here. I do think Vampire's Vengeance is incredibly good, and there are some other solid cards in here. Good commons like Wolf Strike, Restless Bloodseeker, also fun in the life gain decks, but it is the card that I have not played with at all yet due to its rarity, so I don't know, it is a pretty good card. It's a card that has been a thorn in my side whenever I've run up against it, so I'd like to be the one casting it this time around. That being said, I'm pretty excited about Eruth, Tormented Prophet. I think she's just a fantastic card in general, and I would pack one her over a lot of cards here, so they must have had a pretty sweet uncommon. Yeah, I think I'll just take Eruth. I mean, Eruth is definitely fantastic. 3 mana for a 2/4. If you would draw a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library instead. You can only play them during the turn you exile them, but at 3 mana to cast her, next turn you'll have 4 mana, so as long as you don't hit like 2 5-mana cards, you're always going to hit at least something you can cast. So Eruth is really good, drawing 2 a turn instead of 1 a turn from that point on. It is a huge amount of card advantage, and she's just a must-kill threat the second she hits the board. So in this pack we have some more great card draw. Thirst for Discovery, 3 mana instant speed, draw 3 cards, then discard a basic land card. That is the ideal situation most of the time. Really powerful draw spell there, just digs a lot at instant speed. However, we also have fantastic red commons, Flame Blessed Bolt being probably the best one, being a cheap removal spell that also exiles, so you do shut off any graveyard recursion or graveyard synergies. Falconwrath Celebrants is another fantastic red common though as well, just quite a game ender of 4/4 menace, giving you blood tokens as well. Like all 3 of these cards a whole lot. I think I'm just gonna go for Thirst for Discovery here, just for rarity purposes, but now we have just a boatload of card draw off of these 2 cards alone, Thirst for Discovery and Eruth. So now, what do we have? Pick 4. We do have Hookhand Mariner in green to go with our Glorious Sunrise, definitely the best green common in this pack. Really solid beat stick. Lunar Rejection's a pretty good blue card, 4 mana to return any creature to its owner's hand and draw a card. Not a terrible deal at all, pretty nice tempo play. I think I'm just going to take Lunar Rejection here. I don't think I want to just slam down like a Hookhand Mariner and go for Glorious Sunrise. I feel like our blue-red cards are better because we have both Eruth and Thirst for Discovery versus just the one Glorious Sunrise for green. So we take Lunar Rejection here, and we're pretty committed into blue. Maybe red becomes just a splash, but blue for sure. We're looking like we've got a solid start to a blue deck. Now, what do we have? What are my favorite cards in this pack, regardless of color? Because it is early enough to kind of just take the best cards still. Syncopate's fine for blue. Not a massive fan, but it is pretty good in this set because it does exile stuff. I'm mainly just not a fan because I don't love counter spells. I'm just not great with them. Crawling Infestation has been too slow for me, even in the self-mill deck. I feel like Resistance Squad might be one of the best cards in here, just a 3 mana 3/2, and if you have a bit of human tribal going on, it's a 3 mana 3/2 and you draw a card. Might be a little hard to do if we do go like blue-white, but I think it's still the best card in this pack by a little bit. Courier Bat's kind of a close second, because if you get the life gain theme, it's quite a similar ability, drawing you a creature from your graveyard back to your hand. Alright, well, we're seeing a lot of white here. Not a lot of white cards I've played a lot, I think just because I haven't played a ton of white in this format, but I've certainly played against Nebelgast, Beguilers, and Nurturing Presences, and these cards have both performed pretty well for my opponents, so I think these are also these are decent cards to be picking up here, but I do like Dragaskull Infantry better than both of those. Just a great 2-mana 2/2 on curve that gives you more value later in the game, an additional buff. So I'm kind of liking the look of blue-white here, although we do see a pick 7 Falconwrath Celebrants and Voltaic Visionary, 2 solid red cards. I think I'd take both of these higher than I would take like a Wanderlight Spirit or a Fear of Death, even if I was just straight blue-red, where these were the 2 colors to choose from. Yeah, I might just go with Falconwrath Celebrants. I just really, really like this card. But Visionary is also quite good. That 1 temporary card draw off the ability. Become a really big attacker. I'm going to go with the Celebrants here. And now, nothing going on in red. A little bit of white. Both these white cards being a human as well for a resistance squad is nice. These are both pretty similar to me in terms of when I take them in a pack. They both definitely have pretty big flaws that keep them from like the top white common, but they're both fine. You know, Shield Basher really good when you're on the aggressive, but terrible on the defensive. Griff Rider, kind of similar. You know, just a really small little flying attacker. I think I'm going to go with the Shield Basher over the Griff Rider. Just because if we do end up in white, we are very likely to be in white-blue, where we'll just have better blue flyers than white flyers, most likely. And Shield Basher gives us something that color pair is missing a little bit more, which is just a really resilient attacker. Can be a little bit difficult to close out games in white-blue if you don't just have a bunch of tiny flyers or some like really good attacker like the Shield Basher. We do see another Shield Basher here, so it might have been better to take that, but we see Flame Blessed Bolt pick 10. Everyone in this draft saw Flame Blessed Bolt and decided not to take it. There's no way. This isn't a sign that at least if people are drafting red, the people that are drafting red aren't going to be taking the kind of cards that I value highly in red, as highly as I would take them. So even if there are people drafting red in this pod, seeing a Flame Blessed Bolt pick 10 tells me that I should be able to get pretty solid red cards late in the draft regardless. So I think we might be pressing back into just blue-red here, but we can take stuff like Honored Heirloom to hedge our bets in case we do end up splashing somewhere. Keswick Flame Breather is definitely a card I like in the blue-red deck. Not really in anything else, but in the blue-red deck it does shine. You have a lot of non-creature spells, and this just slowly kills your opponent as you play the game. Okay, so now we have another green rare. And it is not a bad one, a 1-mana 2/1 at worst. But we only have 1 green card so far, just Glorious Sunrise. I don't think I'm slamming Ascendant Pack Leader here. I think I'm just going to take another Thirst for Discovery and kind of commit myself into the blue-red spells deck. Just an excellent card for that strategy. Such a cheap instant speed way to draw multiple cards. Sigarda's Imprisonment is a pretty huge option here as well. Although white didn't seem massively open. Sure, we saw a lot of white cards, but the best white card we saw was like Resistance Squad, followed by Dragaskull Infantry. The rest of the white that we saw was kind of filler, like Shield Basher and stuff. So, not 100% on this one, but I'm going to take Thirst for Discovery here. Another Sigarda's Imprisonment, and a Braid, a Curse of Hospitality. Some massive stuff here. I don't think we're going to be creature heavy enough to play Curse of Hospitality. We have 5 right now, and you really want creatures that are evasive, that can kind of get through no matter what. A lot of our creatures are just good blockers. Blood Servitor being a very filler creature, the rest being like a 1/4, a 2/4. Not stuff that attacks in massively well. So Curse of Hospitality, if you hit your opponent, you are drawing additional cards by exiling top card of their library and casting it against them, but I don't think we can just consistently hit our opponent that well. I think I'm just going to take a Braid here. Just an excellent cheap removal spell of the similar vein to Flame Blessed Bolt. So I'll take a Braid here. Would like to wheel Lunar Rejection or just like a Keswick Flame Breather. If nothing else wheels, I find it highly unlikely that the Flame Breather will not. Alright, well I do like Ancestral Anger in the blue-red spells decks. It's just a way to spend 1 mana, cast a sorcery, and draw a card. However, I would take Cruel Witness definitely over Ancestral Anger. The reason is so many more people in the draft pot are going to want this card as a solid rate for a flyer at 4 mana for a 3/2 flyer. Plus we do have a great way to surveil a lot in blue-red, casting a lot of non-creature spells, setting up the top cards of our library with that trigger there. So Cruel Witness is still going to be quite good in our deck, and way less likely to wheel than Ancestral Anger is. And it's also probably just better by a little bit. Nothing much going on here. We could take the Fear of Death just because you can definitely make use of removal. That being said, we already have Flame Blast Bolt, Abrade, Lunar Rejection. None of those are unconditional removal, but neither is Fear of Death. This doesn't shut off abilities or anything. Abrade and Bolt don't kill large toughness creatures. Rejection only temporarily deals with something. So removal's going to be pretty lackluster regardless. I think I'm committed enough to blue-red. I'll take the mediocre blue removal spell. So Geistlight Snare. I have seen this be successful for some of my opponents, but I'm still not super interested in it. I think I'll just take an Ancestral Anger, try to get a bunch of these to just filter through as I have Flame Breathers on the board. Now every time I do this, I do some damage to my opponent and just immediately draw the next card. Oops. Did not want that in the sideboard. Ooh, wow. I would love another Flame Breather here. Try to be like the 4 or 5 Flame Breather deck with 4 or 5 copies of Ancestral Anger. That can be really fun to play. That being said, I think Gutter Skulker is just a more powerful card for the vast majority of decks. And even in this one, when we're not guaranteed to pick up like 4 more Ancestral Angers, Gutter Skulker is probably a bit better. Just quite a good way to get through board stalls and make sure you keep chipping away at your opponent. Plus, again, Flame Breathers are going to go much later than Gutter Skulker will in terms of how quickly they'll be picked up by our opponents. Change of Fortune's pretty much unplayable. It's like a bad wheel effect. Discard your hand, then draw a card for each card you've discarded. So you're spending this card to draw 1 less than the cards you have in hand. So say you have 6 cards in hand, then you cast the change. That means you only have 5 cards in hand, so you discard the 5 and then draw 5. So you're down a card to use it, but it is card selection. If your hand just sucks, it'll be okay, but I don't really want to bank on my hand being terrible. I'm going to take Flame Breather over Siphon Essence just because it's more of my kind of card, more of the aggressive blue-red spells sort of card, but Siphon Essence could very well be the choice here. This has been a solid counterspell. I'm just not a super big counterspell player. And it is definitely good to have unconditional removal like that can counter any creature, because we only have removal that can kill small things. If our opponent plays some big 6/6 or something, we're going to have a bad time. So the best pick there is probably just the counterspell, but I'm just not that sort of player. And I suppose we have a Geistlight Snare now for at least 1 counterspell. Alright, well, another Abrade it is. Markarth Retribution is just not going to work in our deck. We don't really have vampires. I mean, we have Falconeth Celebrants, but I think that's it. Yeah, just 1 vampire. So this is not going to do much. I mean, it'll still give our field +1/+0, but that's just a worse Trumpet Blast or Burn Bright, any of those kind of effects, which those sorts of effects weren't really playable in the first place. Wow, another Abrade, a Cruel Witness, Alluring Suitor, which is super good for aggro, but I don't think we're aggressive enough for the Suitor. And then there's like Fearful Villager, which is like, I would take it after an Alluring Suitor for sure, so that's not really on the table. And Pyrospawn certainly isn't. Just a big old dork. I think I'll take another Cruel Witness here. We have double Abrade and Flame Blast Bolt. Can you really have too many Abrades? Not really, but I think I want more ways to close out the game. Let's get some more decently sized flyers in here. And now I can just take another Flame Blessed Bolt, although I could also take a Lantern Bearer for another decently... Well, I mean, it's a pretty small flyer, but because it gives you that aura, you turn any of your later game creatures into a decently sized flyer. So there is that, but I'm just going to take Flame Blessed Bolt. Card is just so good. We're cutting Honored Heirloom for sure now. Going to go with 23 cards, 17 lands here, most likely. So we'll keep editing the deck as we take cards from this point on. We don't really have anything important enough to protect with a Cradle of Safety, so I'm not really going to take it here, but I think the card is very playable if you have good bombs, or just creatures with good abilities you really want to protect. Like, I guess Gutter Skulker, we have like one card we really want to protect with Cradle, but overall, just not a ton. Mostly a lot of expendable stuff in here. That being said, am I really going to play Foreboding Statue in a 2-color deck? Probably not, so I guess it's slightly more likely we'll play Cradle, but I'll put it in the sideboard for now. Alright, I'll just have a massive stack of Kessig Flame Breather. I am all about that life. Probably getting rid of Blood Servitor here, just being a very filler creature, pretty small for its cost. Not going to help us block super well. And I'm more of a fan of like the filler non-creature cards in this deck because we're the triple Flame Breather, double Cruel Witness deck, where we are getting value off of casting non-creature spells. So I would rather have the filler Wedding Invitation over the filler Blood Servitor. That being said, I don't want to play like a million Fear of Death. Like, these are probably the next cuts on the line here, so I'm not really going to take a third. I'd probably play a second Pyre Spawn over a second Fear of Death, if I'm being honest. Just taking another look at the deck. Yeah, I'm going to cut a Fear of Death here. We have 12 creatures. Plenty for a blue-red spells deck, but definitely pretty low for your average deck. Skywarp Scob, exile 2 creatures from your grave to draw a card. We have a low creature count, that's not going to happen too often, so just a 5-mana 2/5 flyer most of the time, not really worth it. We can just take Lantern of the Lost and treat this as a second copy of Wedding Invitation, just 2 mana draw a card, immediately draw our next thing. And if our opponent happens to be playing a Disturbed deck, we get a lot of value off of this, or just anything with graveyard synergies. We'll have a fun time with that card. Kind of like more copies of Ancestral Anger, really. This card, you can just disregard the first 4 lines of text on this card, and it's still playable for the blue-red spells deck. Just pretend it's a 1-mana sorcery draw card. So if you put that same mentality towards Lantern of the Lost, this is a 2-mana colorless way to draw a card. So anytime you do get to exile stuff from your opponent's deck, you're having a very good time. You know, Alchemist Retrieval might not be the worst here, and I already cut 1 Servitor, so if I really want one, I can just put that one back in. It's going to be an interesting deck here. I don't love the Lanterns, don't love the Pyre Spawns. Don't love Geistlight Snare. The other thing about counterspells in this deck is if we hit a counterspell off of Eruth, that's just exiled forever, doing nothing for us. So definitely don't love the prospect of that happening. And that is something to consider. But we only have 1 copy of Eruth, so it's like we could absolutely run as many counterspells as we want. But there is that slight bit of extra justification for cutting counterspells when I don't like them in the first place, just because I'm not good at using them. I've went over this concept before. It's a pretty simple concept, but I don't think there's one objectively correct way to draft, because it really depends alternatively on the player and their play styles as well. Like, if you go for the deck in this draft where you're taking the cards with the highest win rate the whole time, this deck probably ends up with a lot more counterspells, maybe less creatures than it had right now, where you have some of those 3-mana counterspells. I'm just not good at playing those kinds of cards, so I'm going to have a higher win rate if I have, you know, multiple Kessig Flame Breathers instead of some counterspells in here, whereas most other players that are adept with counterspells might have a higher win rate with a deck featuring more of those. So basically, I'm building this deck to my strengths specifically, instead of just as what is the best version of this deck possible. And I think that is one thing to consider during drafting. And I think it's one of the coolest things about draft is that almost every decision, well, not almost every decision, but a lot of decisions throughout the draft, there's not really an objective best pick. There are a lot of factors going on, and one of them to consider is your personal deck building and gameplay strengths. So again, for that reason, I'm just going to cut Geistlight Snare here, and then I'm probably cutting Fear of Death just because I don't like it. I could see going 18 lands here because our curve gets so high with double Pyre Spawn, but the other thing to consider about lands is that with a bunch of card draw, we will be cycling through non-land cards to potentially hit lands. Oh yeah. We have 4 cards that straight up cycle. They just draw a card when we cast them. These draw a card for 1 mana, these draw a card for 2. And then these just draw 3 cards for 3. Yeah, we have more than enough card draw to justify still running 17 lands here. Do we cut down to 16 lands? Is the final cut here another land just because of the card draw available to us? Even Lunar Rejection to an extent, but that's a 4 mana card, so it doesn't really help us hit land drops. Once we have 4 mana, we have pretty much as much lands as we need for the vast majority of our deck. I don't know. I could see Retrieval. I could see one of the Lanterns. Could see one of the Pyre Spawns. Oops, I accidentally cut one of the Pyre Spawns. Maybe that is a sign. Because I did replace my mouse. I am now using a mouse that does not double click. That was just my finger twitching. So that might be a genuine sign to cut us Pyre Spawn here. We do need ways to close out the game, especially with Eruth, because if we just mill through our whole deck and draw it all, there could still be situations where our opponent just has enough removal to go like, all right, kill Cruel Witness, kill Gutter Skulker, and then just have enough blockers for the Menace stuff, the Celebrants or the Pyre Spawn stuff, and then we just get walled off and we sit there with no cards in our library waiting to die. Like, that could absolutely happen. I mean, it is fair enough that with Eruth on the board, you don't actually lose the game from having 0 cards in your library, because you do not draw cards, you just exile the top cards of your library. So if you have 0 cards in your library and you would draw a card, normally you would die if you draw a card from an empty library, but if you have Eruth on the board, you don't get to draw a card from an empty library, you just exile the top 2 non-existent cards again. So at least with Eruth out, if we mill ourselves our whole deck and don't find a way to win, we could sit there and maybe hope our opponent mills themselves out. But I think a much more viable strategy is to just make sure we have enough win cons in here to close out the game so we don't just die to a last-minute removal spell on Eruth if we mill ourselves out. I guess we do have to consider the Flame Breathers along that line. Like, if we just have a couple Flame Breathers out, we just have to cast 10 non-creature spells, and if we are filtering through our whole deck, which we are somewhat doing with Eruth and a ton of big card draw like Thirst for Discovery, then we do kind of get there with those. At least we whittle our opponent down enough with the Flame Breathers to make it so we don't have to keep our Cruel Witnesses and Gutter Skulkers on the board that long. That being said, after that giant spiel, all of those arguments, I am just going to put Gutter Skulker right back into this deck. Or not Gutter Skulker, Pyre Spawn. Gonna put it right back into the deck and cut one of these Lanterns, I guess. Because I am still concerned about the lack of kill potential in our deck. But yeah, here we go. Here is our blue-red spells deck for this draft. And as we wait for the first round, well, here is the first round. I was going to say there are some exciting events on the horizon if you are interested in some more high-level draft gameplay. This is just a premier draft and the new season just started, so I don't really care too much about winning here, so I am still sort of in it for fun, not super stressed out or anything. But if you are interested in me getting stressed out and playing some very high-level Magic, I did get top 1200 Mythic last season, which means I am qualified for the Mythic Invitational Qualifier draft event coming December 16th, somewhere around there, December 18th. 2 weekends from now, we'll have that event, and next weekend, of course I'm working backwards like an idiot, but next weekend we have the Arena Open, the first ever Draft Arena Open, so I will be doing a video of both of those events. If you're excited to see some high-level Innistrad Crimson Vow drafts where we will be playing against a bunch of high-level opponents trying to win some cash money against us. So I'm waiting on the Flame Blast Bolt so I can get the maximum value off of the Flame Breather's effect. The other reason is this Ragged Recluse isn't going to be able to attack in anyway if we have a 1-3 on the board. It can't attack in until they flip it to the 3-3. And even if they discard a card during that turn that we cast the Flame Breather, it doesn't flip until the end step. So we're just guaranteed to not have to worry about the Recluse if we play Flame Breather. And now here, with a Braid and Flame Blast Bolt in hand, we have multiple instant speed cards to play, or we can just Thirst for Discovery if we don't need to bolt something. Like the idea of that. Bolt something if they do get to manage a good attack here, and if not, we just Thirst. Alright, we'll just Thirst. I think I'd rather discard 2 cards in this land here. We're still definitely looking for more lands at this point, and we could discard like Retrieval Binding Geist here, and then we have a Spectral Binding to remove one of these two. Seems pretty good to me. And now we have the 2 mana to use the Spectral Binding to shut off the... I guess if we shut off the Celebrant, they can still attack in and cash it in for a blood token. But if we shut off the Recluse, it will become a 1-3 eventually, which is big enough to matter. I think I'm still going to shut off the Recluse here. Just because I'd much rather Flame Blast Bolt the Celebrant because it has a death trigger. And if the Recluse flips to being a 1-3, like that's just very little of a threat. I guess with the activated ability it is a little scary, but certainly not bad. Persistent Specimen. Alright, I would rather Flame Blast Bolt that thing than anything else, because that is an incredibly annoying blocker/attacker. So we know our opponent has a Bleed Dry from the Reckless Impulse. They get to cast that next turn. This is really interesting to me. I'll absolutely just accept that. Flame Breather's mainly here just for its effect. I guess now they do get to send in with the Celebrant. I think I do want to bolt the Specimen, so I'll Abrade the Celebrant. But now if I just don't play a creature, then this Bleed Dry is going away permanently at no value to them. Because they're not going to want to Gift of Fangs and Bleed Dry a Flame Breather, so I'm just not going to play a creature this turn. Now we know the Bleed Dry is just permanently gone. We have 6 mana here, 1 for Bolt, 4 for Rejection. How likely are we to need to Lunar Rejection here? Incredibly unlikely, unless they play just a massive haste creature, so I'll play Wedding Invitation instead and hold up Flame Blast Bolt. Another land is nice. Makes it much easier to double spell off of something we draw from Rejection. Definitely, ideally, it would be a mountain. We'd like to be able to hold up both Bolt and Abrade, but still fine. So, I mean, Flame Breather's doing its thing. We're a quarter of the way there just from playing the game here. Just from kind of surviving. And it is certainly going to make Gutter Skulker a much quicker clock once we do get that out. Another Belligerent Guest will probably Abrade that. Although they do flip the Recluse now because they use the blood tokens. That is a 1-3, which does matter against our -1/1. So we do have 6 mana now. That's enough to cast Gutter Skulker and still hold up Abrade. Pretty big fan of that. Now we can block Odious Witch and shoot the Belligerent Guest. Could shoot the guest right now while they're tapped out. What are the odds they play a better creature with 3 or less toughness? It's not actually that low, because Black-Red does have some bombs that are just like a 2-mana 2/1 flyer with a massive stack of abilities, so I like to be able to kill that kind of card. Now, by doing it this way, I am leaving myself open to getting got by the Undying Malice, but I do like leaving myself open to being able to kill the cheap flying or menace threats that Black-Red has. Alright, so they do Falconwrath Celebrants here. Braid was definitely not going to kill that. Unless we stacked a blocker on top of it as well. So Lantern of the Lost, we could do that and draw a card here. We'll still have 5 mana up afterwards. Probably worth it. Probably actually just rather use double blue here. It doesn't matter, I'm about to exile the whole graveyard. Ooh, Cruel Witness, a flyer here? Yeah, now we get to attack with Gutter Skulker pretty freely, because our flyer can block their 1/3. We have 6 unblockable damage on the board if we sacrifice our Wedding Invitation. Gutter Skulker isn't unblockable unless it's attacking alone. So if we don't crack Wedding Invitation, we can only attack with 1 of these 2 each turn. But at the very least, even if we don't crack Wedding Invitation, now we have redundancy to where if they kill one of our 2 evasive threats, we're still getting in for 3 a turn that they can't block. So that's pretty nice. So what could this be here? This could be a Flame Blessed Bolt or something on the Cruel Witness. Extra 2 damage there to kill that. You know, I think I'm cool just taking the extra 1 here. The thing that I don't like, the thing that makes me really want to kill the Witch is the fact that it gains them a little bit of life. But the 2 damage that it's doing here, 1 from the attack trigger and 1 from damaging me, is not that scary. So I'll just make sure they can't Flame Blessed Bolt my Cruel Witness. And judging by that attack, I will play around Flame Blessed Bolt or Gift of Fangs, it could be also. Ooh, Vampire's Vengeance. Yeah, that would have been sick. That would have killed the Flame Breather and the Cruel Witness if I blocked. So super glad I didn't block there. Ooh, Pyre spawns the draw. They're at 11, I'm at 14. They're going to gain 2 life. I feel like we do play the Pyre spawn here, because it's 6 unblockable damage with Wedding Invitation. Lunar Rejection does make me feel safe, but if you think about it this way, if we attack with Gutter Skulker and Cruel Witness, they're not going to block Gutter Skulker. They'll take 6 and go to 5. They gain 2 life from the 2 Odious Witches. That puts them to 7. We can make 1 creature unblockable with Wedding Invitation. That'd be Pyre Spawn. Hit them for 6. They're down to 1. They die if we cast something to Flame Breather, or if Cruel Witness is still around and also attacks. So yeah, I think Pyre Spawn's just so likely to kill them next turn that we're okay to take the massive hit here. Alright, and they play it safe. They do take the trade with Gutter Skulker, which I think also just works in our favor. That's pretty fine as well. Because now we just play Pyre Spawn. We know they don't have the removal they were holding anymore, so Pyre Spawn holds off their Odious Witch. We just take the 4, and then we crack back for 9? Yeah, and they'll be at 9 life, so still lethal even if they do take the trade there. So they need some additional support off the top. We don't know what they drew off the blood token last turn, so that might be enough to save them. They might have had a removal spell from that blood token. And if not then, they could have one now. So there's Belligerent Guest. 1 card in hand, Groom's Finery it is. That is the whole hand on the table. No removal, that is 9 unblockable damage. Let's get in there for the kill. Pyre Spawn just working excellently in conjunction with our Wedding Invitation to be our win condition that game. Well, I mean, I guess most of the damage was just like the 3/3 flyer. The 3/3 unblockable stuff being the main win con, but even the Pyre Elemental coming in hot in the end. So 1-0 to start off this draft. Alright, here we are in game 2. On the play with an excellent hand. Flame Breather and Bolt again. Cruel Witness turn 4 if we draw another island by then. Super into this hand. Our opponent is playing black again with a Swamp as the first play. Black and blue here. Could be an exploit deck. Opponent does start off with the 2-mana 3/3 Defender, which is going to be really annoying for our Flame Breather. Never going to get in there. If they play any enchantments, it also gets to attack us. Ooh, yeah, this is going to be a really annoying deck to attack into. They now have played the 3-mana 1/5 Catapult Fodder. Flips into a 2/6 that can sack their creatures with high toughness to do a bunch of damage to us if they have 3 creatures on board with higher toughness than power. So very defensive deck so far, very interesting stuff. Runo Stromkirk, how does this work? At the beginning of their upkeep, they look at the top card of their library, that you can reveal it. If it's a creature with mana value 6 or greater, they flip it into a 3/5 flyer. Copy another attacking creature and stuff. Okay, that's pretty fine, because if it ever flips, we can just put it back to their hand with our Lunar Rejection. And if it blocks here, we can just kill it with Flame Blast Bolt. Yeah, because it doesn't, like, draw it, right? Look at the top card of the library, you reveal it. If it's creature with mana 6 or greater, transform it. Yeah, so it functionally doesn't really change anything if it flips. We just put it back to the hand, and then they have to start all over. Unfortunately, they did flip both the Catapult Captains, which is pretty terrifying when they have 12, 16, 17, 18, 19 toughness on the board to throw at us. We're just going to have to try to outrace that. It does cost 3 mana and tap that to sack the creatures. So I think we can do it. I think we can outrace those. But we'll find out. Okay, luckily for us, they don't have the mana to actually use this ability here, which means that we get to kill Runo without them even damaging us. The only issue is now we can't cast Pyre Spawn. That is rough, but certainly not the end of the world here. Having another land to be able to cast Pyre Spawn and hold up Flame Blast Bolt is kind of nice, but there's nothing that we're going to Flame Blast Bolt right now. So I think I'm putting this in the grave. Because on the current board state, we have no reason to cast Pyre Spawn and hold up Bolt next turn. We could reject a Captain here. So they replayed it's only a 1/5, but that only stops like 1 of the damage. Like, sure, they can't use both abilities in one turn, but I already think they're probably not planning on doing that. See, I'll just pass. So they have 15 damage with their toughness currently on board. We do hit a land anyway, so we can still Pyre Spawn hold up a Bolt here, which is nice. Just send in the Cruel Witness first. Chill of the Grave. Tap it down. Does not untap during the next untap step. Sure. So it's still alive. But it'll be a little while before it hits them. So that definitely gives them more time to find the victory with the Catapult Captains. Lunar Rejection, pretty nice on a 6-drop. Put it back into our hand, they draw a card. Undead Butler. Mill 3 cards. When it dies, pick up a creature from their grave. Currently no creatures in there. Now they have Biolume Egg and Ragged Recluse. Not seen any exploit cards from them yet, so I don't know how good the Egg's going to be, and we haven't seen any discard from them either, so I don't know how good the Recluse is going to be. Not the scariest mills they could have hit. If they do have something scary, we can just bolt the Butler so that it gets exiled and doesn't get its ability. But we're probably going to bolt Lantern Bearer. I suppose with Catapult Captains on board, they can respond to our bolt by just sacrificing whatever we target, which is pretty annoying. Alright, back at it again with the big old Pyre Spawn. Yeah, no, Lantern Bearer is actually a really big problem, because we don't have any way to exile that. If we ever try to exile it, they just sacrifice it in response. And if it dies, then all of a sudden now they have a 3/7 flyer to block Cruel Witness. So that is actually a big issue. I guess with a Lunar Rejection, we can get rid of the aura that they put on something else. So we can bolt the bearer right now so they can't just chump block with it. And then attack with both of these. And then whatever they try to put Lantern's Lift onto, we can just put that back in their hand. That's kind of cool. We do have enough mana to cast everything in our hand, which is nice. Suppose there's no reason to bolt it here. We just let them do the block. And again, these creatures in the grave don't matter that much. We can just let the Butler go off. It can pick up the Lantern Bearer if they want when it dies. Even if they don't sacrifice the Lantern Bearer. Because they'll die at the same time, its trigger will be on the stack while the Lantern card is in the grave. So if they really want to, they could pick up the Lantern without even sacking here. But they are just going to go for the double sack on the small creatures to get that extra damage in there. Exile the Undead Butler to pick up the Biolume Egg. Alright. So they must have just like an exploit card as their last card in hand here. Yeah, I don't want a Lunar Rejection right now. Because I'm saving the Lunar Rejection to deal with whatever gets Lanterns lifted. Again, as I said before, I could have made it at any point to where they could only have one of these as the 2/6, but it's more important to just deal with the Lantern's Lift at this point in the game. There was definitely an argument much earlier on for like bouncing their 1/4 when they had the 2 1/5s out. To keep them off of the captains for a turn, but I think they still would have gotten the captains in the grand scheme of things. They just play the 1/4 next turn and get it. So it wouldn't have like stopped them from getting the captains permanently. It would have just been for a turn. Removal on Pyre Spawn here. No, just going for the kill with the Catapult Captain here. Going for 4 damage. And they get that 4/4 token out from the Egg's ability. Which I totally forgot. Doesn't necessarily need... doesn't need to be an exploit card for them to get the 4/4 Serpent out of it. Falconwrath Celebrants? Is that going to be fast enough to kill our opponent? So we're going to be at 13 life. Facing a Catapult Captain with a 3/3, a 2/6, and a 4/4. That's 10, that's 13. We need to kill them in 3 turns. But 3 turns with a Pyre Spawn, Cruel Witness, and a Celebrants out? That's definitely fast enough. Let's keep that. Oh yeah, and we're just drawing it right to our hand, so we'll get another card after that for next turn. Alright. So the 4/4 Serpent is out. And we draw Cruel Witness here. That's probably better than Celebrants. Yeah, definitely better than Celebrants. Well, I don't know about definitely, but probably. So we can play this pre-combat in case we want to bolt something here. So we can get 2 Surveils out. Because I think we might. Because I'm going to whittle down the Serpent. Well, I guess this just straight trades for that. This would be that plus Flame Blast Bolts. It really doesn't matter where I throw the -2. Actually, it does. That way the Pyre Spawn can't die here. Unless they double block it. So they do go for the double block on the Pyre Spawn. So we can kill both of these thanks to Pyre Spawn's ability. We don't even need to throw the Flame Blast Bolt at anything. And, is that the idea here? Is that the plan? I believe it is. Could also just do 3 to their face, so they just die to flyers next turn. They take 6-7 guaranteed from Flame Blast Bolt. I think it's better to make sure they die to flyers next turn, actually. Now that I think of it, like, what is Steelclad Spirit really doing to us here? Very little. Unfortunately, a Cruel Witness from our opponent here. Gonna give them another turn, could be enough to finish us off with this Catapult Captain, but thankfully, the other one will not flip here. So they only have the ability to use the ability once per turn. Yes, I did just say the ability to use the ability, it happens. You know what? I should have considered there just slamming down Flame Blast Bolt to, just to Surveil 2 and do 1 damage to our opponent. Because we really don't know if our opponent's ever going to play a creature small enough to bolt away. And at this point, we're only attacking with 3/3s in the sky, which are already big enough to kill the Cruel Witness here. Ah, there's the Abrade to get rid of the Cruel Witness, but 1 mana too little. Had we discarded Flame Blast Bolt, if we knew exactly what was on top, discard the Flame Blast Bolt, we could have Abraded Cruel Witness and won right now. But we're still in a pretty great position, I think. Yeah. We kill them in 2 turns by just attacking like this. Could attack with Binding Geist as well. I don't see a massive reason not to, because it makes sure that both Cruel Witnesses stay alive. It does make the Binding Geist die, but we still have 2 blockers after that. So they throw 5 damage at us, we go to 8. Actually, no, they only have 2 mana up. They can't even throw something this turn. Yeah, no, if they can't even throw something right now, this is a pretty safe attack, I think, to send in the Binding Geist as well. If they could throw something at us, I might be a little sketched out about attacking with Binding Geist as well, because I'd like to hold up 3 blockers. So they don't find some extra way to chip in for lethal, just by going wide. But luckily for us, they just didn't have enough mana to even sacrifice there on the block. So that's 2-0 now. Really interesting deck from our opponent, the blue-black high toughness deck there. Pretty cool stuff. All right. Well, this deck has been popping off here. I don't think I gave our Flame Breathers and our Cruel Witnesses enough respect, especially the Cruel Witnesses as just win conditions of themselves. Which is kind of funny, because I think I've drafted blue-red spells more than any other archetype. No, probably black-red vampires has been my most drafted archetype here. But I have thoroughly enjoyed every blue-red spells deck I've drafted in this format. Ooh. Oh no, that's another swamp. I don't know why. The little bit of green in the background made me think it was a forest for a second. I was like, ooh, our Lunar Rejection's going to be awesome this matchup. They do look to be black-green here. Do I really want to bolt a Doom Dissenter? I could just kill the 2/2 it makes instead, if I'm that scared. Now let's thirst for discovery here, make sure we hit our 4th land draw. Unfortunately, we are probably actually just using it as card selection here. Just straight up discarding 2 after we draw the 3. But if we draw 2 basic lands, that'll be beautiful out of these 3 cards. Yeah, if 2 out of 3 of these are lands, then we live the dream. Oh yeah. Especially because we don't have the 2nd island anyway, so the 5th land being a mountain is very redundant. We really need an island. So it's real easy to discard a mountain there. Unfortunately, we actually just don't get to cast a Cruel Witness there because I forgot to ask for literally an island. I just said we needed a land. I was incorrect. We needed a specific color. Alchemist's Retrieval is the draw. Probably not terrible here in this matchup. Because if they like tap out for a 6-drop or something, just put it back in their hand. That being said, some of the better 6-drops in green are really nice because they have good enter the battlefield effects. So bouncing one of those will be sad if they play the really big one that gains them some life. So we can force them to dump a bunch of mana into this and then just still kill it anyway. So it slows them down from playing a 4-mana card this turn, and we still kill the wolf. So it seems pretty good to me. They do have a persistent specimen, which is very annoying. I'm just going to kill that right now. But we are now out of removal. But again, against the green deck, not so sure how much the Flame Blessed Bolts are going to do later. So here we are yet again, Flame Breather already a quarter of the way there. Exclusively thanks to the Kessig Flame Breather here. Could even have attacked in there if I really wanted. I probably should have, because like if they block and make a 2-2, am I that worried about getting hit by a 2-2 right now? Really not. Ooh, Binding Geist is actually useless against Ancient Lumberknot. Because it lowers the power, but their creatures can deal damage equal to their toughness if they want. Definitely like getting the Cruel Witness out, and we're probably just going to start sending in with that in the sky to try to close this one out. Ooh, Dormant Grove. That is an issue. Lumberknot is now a 5/5. Next turn it'll be a 6/6, and they'll have a 3/6 Vigilance out as well. So they're going to have some really big stuff out. We really need to just outrace them in the sky here, which, with the Wedding Invitation out, shouldn't be impossible. Because we hit for 3 right now, put them to 12. Next turn we hit for 6 in the sky, put them to 6 life. Could do 3 more damage at any time with Wedding Invitation on Binding Geist. And 1 more damage at any time with Alchemist Retrieval, as well as, of course, Alchemist Retrieval slowing them down. How much blood tokens do we have in this deck? We have Falconwrath Celebrants. I think that's the only blood token producer. Yeah, we have enough card draw in here. I would rather just play the land right now in case we play a card draw spell and then need to play another land next turn as well to cast everything. Because obviously we can't play the land that we currently have in hand and a land that we draw next turn in the same turn. Well, this is looking bad. Ancient Sharpshooter coming out alongside the... or Apprentice Sharpshooter coming out alongside the Ancient Lumberknot is going to be a challenge here. Yep, and the Grove Strider has flipped here, so they have 2 6/6 Vigilance creatures coming in, but nothing... well, never mind. Sharpshooter does block in the sky too. Yeah, that's very bad that Sharpshooter can block for them. So I guess we're Alchemist Retrievaling the Sharpshooter to hit for 6 here and put them to 5, because Retrieval, of course, does a damage. And I'm going to do it in my upkeep, so that I can set up what I draw next turn. So I think I just take the 6 right now. Save our chump blockers for the last opportunity. But now we bounce that Sharpshooter so we can get in with the Cruel Witnesses, and we can Surveil before we draw a card. So Pyre Spawn, 4/5. Well, if we hit a 6-drop, that would be the one most awkward thing to hit. That being said, I think even if we drew Pyre Spawn, we would rather just throw Sharpshooter back into their hand. I think I actually just discard this, because I obviously don't have time to play it this turn, and I need cards that I can just immediately cast. Ooh, Flame Breather is cool. No massive immediate impact, though. Just gonna mill that too, I think. See what we get. Ooh, a Braid. So Braid isn't enough to kill anything here, but it is another non-creature spell, which is really huge with the Surveil, obviously. I think they're just dead next turn, if we can survive. Oh yeah, they're definitely dead next turn if we can survive. Because we're hitting with 3 damage from a Cruel Witness and 3 damage from an unblockable Binding Geist thanks to the Wedding Invitation. So we're hitting for 6, and they're going to be at 4 because we get to cast in a Braid in their end step. I can hit for 5 damage still by casting in a Braid and a Spectral Binding instead of attacking with Binding Geist. This might be a mistake here, but I like the idea of potentially killing Lumberknot here, and then we still have lethal because Flame Breather triggers twice here. But like now we're actually getting value out of the Abrade. Still looking for cards with immediate impact because we kind of just die if we don't immediately kill our opponent next turn. So they can save the Lumberknot. I'm fine with that as long as they don't kill any of our Cruel Witnesses or our Flame Breather. The pieces that really matter here are the Flyers and the Flame Breather. So if they want to do whatever they can to protect their own creatures, I'm very fine with that. So they are in the think tank here. It is a huge turn for them. They definitely see that there is lethal coming to them next turn because of this this Wedding Invitation, these Cruel Witnesses, the Flame Breather. There's lethal coming to them in a lot of ways here. Pass turn. Do we give Flame Breather unblockable and send it in? Probably not, right? What could they have to save themselves? Kill one Cruel Witness with a shock effect? I guess we just Binding Geist pre-combat so we know we get the 1 damage off of it. That's another Flame Breather damage next turn if we somehow don't find lethal. So I'll keep that one. Alright, let's see. All 3 of our creatures are unblockable now on the current board state. And with the 2/2 shut off, if we just play a Falconwrath Celebrants, that'll chump block the Grove Strider if they do survive another turn. Which means we have 1 turn after this to find lethal. Alright, just 1 Crushing Canopy is what they had, but they didn't have enough mana to play their Reach creature plus their Crushing Canopy. It's probably what they were hoping for there. Fortunately, just 1 land off from that. Alright, so we are now 3-0 with the blue-red spells deck. Pretty nice start to this draft no matter what happens here. We can't be too unhappy with a nice 50-50 win rate at worst. Alright, so here we are in round 4. Bit of an awkward hand. Only a Flame Blessed Bolt for the early game. Retrieval isn't a ton of interaction, but I'm still going to keep it. Mulliganing is very rough and limited. We would much rather not go down a card unless our hand is very bad. I think this is close, but just enough going on for me to just keep it here. Ooh, that was rough. We would have rather just not killed the skeleton so we could cast Ancestral Anger that turn. I am so glad I killed that skeleton. Stop this skull scab from just going off here. I think I have died to turn 1 Persistent Specimen into turn 2 Skull Scab more than anything else in this format. It is a brutal combo. 2 2/2s on turn 2, and then they just get the 1/1 back later anyway. Could slow them down, throw that back to their hand. Don't think I want to, though. There we go, Flame Breather. Perfect, a 1/3 to block their 2/2, and we get to draw the card here and get value from the Flame Breather damage. Alright, now we're only 1 land draw away from casting Pyre Spawn. And there's a Stitched Assistant. They can exploit the Assistant and get a 2/2 scry 1 draw card, or exploit the Skull Scab. I don't know why I can't say that. But looks like they just want to keep the Stitched Assistant out for now. So Alchemist Retrieval, I think we just want to hold on to this to be able to kill one of their 2/2 zombie tokens, most likely. I feel like bouncing one of their exploit cards seems like probably a bad idea, because then they just get to run it out and actually exploit something when they want to. Get that extra bit of value in. When they do have something expendable. Kind of like main phasing this, because then we can still hold up Retrieval, or if we draw something better, do that instead. Alright, we are definitely discarding 1 land here. Alright, so we are just still holding up Retrieval, it looks like. Probably have a Bleed Dry over there if they have 4 mana and nothing to do. So Pyre Spawn's just going to get exiled here. Might play Cruel Witness first. We can Cruel Witness and still hold up Retrieval. Retrieve our own Witness. And then if we don't need to, then on turn 7, we have enough mana to cast Pyre Spawn and hold the 1 blue mana up to bring it back to hand if they try to kill it. We do take another hit from Stitched Assistant that way, but our opponent has 5 mana up here and they're not casting anything. They didn't cast anything turn 4 or turn 5. I might actually be happier with another Flame Breather since we drew into that than a Cruel Witness, because then we just like double block Assistant. If they try to Bleed Dry one of our Flame Breathers in response, I guess we Retrieval the Assistant at that point. But it might just convince them to stop attacking at this point, because we trade 1 Flame Breather for 1 Assistant. But if we play Cruel Witness, I'm still just not going to block Stitched Assistant, and they might just Bleed Dry a Cruel Witness and call it a day. I don't know, I guess if they have like 1 instant speed removal spell in hand, either way we're going to end up having to crack the Alchemist Retrieval. So we might as well do the play that works better for next turn. Or alternatively, we can just play Flame Breather and let them kill Cruel Witness. I might be happier with that than holding up Retrieval. Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to do that. Go ahead and Bleed Dry the Cruel Witness now that I'm tapped out. If you have another removal spell, we still have Alchemist Retrieval to save Pyre Spawn. And if you can't kill Pyre Spawn, like we have this board game on lock, Pyre Spawn just clears the whole board and deals 3 damage to their face. That's if they go for the double block. If they have another removal spell here, do we want to let them cash it in to kill 2 Flame Breathers? would mean Pyre Spawn's more likely to remain, and this way we don't just go down to 11. Yeah, if their hand's mono removal, we can go for it here. Alright, if they had the removal, they did not want to cash it in there. Ooh, Repository Scab, though. That'll bring the Bleed Dry right back. Joke's on them, though. They're not going to see the 1-mana trick coming here. I guess I also just have a second Pyre Spawn, just in case. And also, the 1-mana trick isn't that good, because they still get rid of it as a blocker for a turn, which might be enough to give them enough pressure to just kill us. We'll see. I mean, they're just doing 5 here. Down to 9. They can make a 4/4 flyer. If they try to Lanterns Lift one of their smaller creatures, we can really get them. So I would hope for that. Try to spread out their threats that way. Nope. Lanterns Lift on the 3/3, so we can't get that with a Flame Blessed Bolt. And a Desperate Farmer. Probably killing the farmer with the bolt now. Alright, so we have to be able to deal with this scab or we are quite dead. Well, Thirst for Discovery's big here. Definitely better than Pyre Spawn, otherwise we're just like dead on board. Not quite, we're 1 damage off, but still more than close enough. Ooh, Lunar Rejection. They do get to get Bleed Dry back to their hand if we do that, but I think it's still certainly worth it. Do we attack with Pyre Spawn here? Block a 2/2, take 2? We have to put our own pressure on at some point. And I think the sooner the better. I mean, I guess if we do Rejection the Scab, they're just getting back a Bleed Dry to kill 1 Pyre Spawn. They won't have the mana to cast it the turn they recast the Scab. So, like, we have as many blockers as we need if we just Rejection the Repository Scab here. And just don't get aggressive. Sure. I think I'm actually just going to wait it out here. If they syncopate me, that's super bad, but... so maybe I should have just main phased that. So go ahead and get your Bleed Dry back to deal with Pyre Spawn, but we'll still have... I think we'll still have the board advantage after this. If these other 2 cards aren't gas. They very well could be. Uh-oh. They are gas. Interesting, sack the Skull Scab there. I would not have expected that one. Abrade is a great draw. Aha! Double Pyre Spawn. So they have 3 creatures to attack with. I'm gonna have 1 blocker if I attack with my Pyre Spawn. Yeah, if I attack with my Pyre Spawn, they just crack back with 3 creatures and I have a single blocker. I block their 2/2, kill their 3/3, and take 3 damage. But they would have taken 6, so they'd be down to 8. They'd take another from Abrade, they'd be down to 7. If I top deck a non-creature card, I win there. Alright, I win if I top deck a non-creature here. If they can't kill Flame Breather as well. If they can kill both my creatures, I do die on the spot. Diregraph Scavenger! Alright, well. The bane of my existence there. Diregraph Scavenger gets me bad. Scavenger would have been a brutal time even if we held back on blocks there. I feel like there were definitely different lines we could have taken there. Being more aggressive from the start or more defensive from the start might have changed things around. I would have to rewatch to know, though. It's very hard to remember turn by turn all the events that happened in that game. It was a long one. I definitely think that was one of those games where the loss was not predetermined there. Alright. So, kind of just getting things started with some gas here. Turn 2 Flame Breather, turn 3 Binding Geist, one of the most aggressive starts we can have. A 3-power creature turn 3 in this deck. So our opponent is black and blue again. They started with a Blood Fountain, getting a blood token to discard an island and draw a card. The Blood Fountain gives them great recursion later in the game. 4 mana to sacrifice and bring 2 creatures back from their grave to hand. Here's a Stitched Assistant. I would be very surprised if it exploits, and certainly it does not. I think we just cast a Cruel Witness here and pass the turn. I don't really want to Flame Blast Bolt just to get 4 damage in this turn. When I can do it for even more next turn unless they play another creature. And even if they do play another creature, we do get in for flying damage next turn. I guess I could offer the trade with Binding Geist. That's not terrible. Yeah, sure. We'll offer the trade with the Binding Geist here. Just still have the Bolt for something else. Blue and black tend to have a decent amount of low toughness creatures. Freaking Diregraph Scavenger back at it again. Not actually doing that much this game. Because it's like, alright, I just won't attack or block with the Flame Breather anymore. I'll just use it for its ability. Holding up a Bleed Dry here, I guess. If I Ancestral Anger the Cruel Witness and they Bleed Dry, then I don't draw the card. I'm just gonna Anger their Scavenger so they can't, like, use a removal spell to counter this. Because I don't really actually care about the extra 1 damage, I really want the card draw here. Another Bolts is pretty fine by me. So yeah, again, if we angered our Cruel Witness there, they Bleed Dry it, I don't draw a card, so I'm like 2 for 1 there, which is really bad. So that's why I angered the Scavenger, because the other options, sure, we could have angered the Flame Breather, they probably wouldn't throw Bleed Dry at that, but since I'm not going to attack with Flame Breather, even if I anger it, I might as well throw it onto their Scavenger, because there is a 0% chance that they're going to remove their own Scavenger to counter my card draw. Alright, we got kind of a stalemate here. I mean, they can start attacking for 2 a turn if they want, and then I'll start attacking for 1 a turn. That has them winning on board, but with Flamebreather's ability, I think I probably still win in the grand scheme of things there. So I'm not going to do the 2-for-1 trade of Flamebreather plus Bolt to kill their Scavenger. Although I do have that option. Fellstinger. I might want to kill that before its ability resolves, so they can't just sack it draw 2. If they want to draw 2, they have to sack Scavenger now. Plus, it'll be exiled, so they can't pick it up with Blood Fountain. Yeah, I'm pretty down for that. Just kill that before the exploit trigger resolves. So it is exiled, they won't bring it back with Blood Fountain, and if they want to draw the cards, they lose their only creature on board. They might still want to draw the cards, I wouldn't put it past them. Depends on what's in their deck. If they have like a Hullbreaker, Horror, and a Geralf, like, that's a deck where you want to dig enough that you would sack your 1 Scavenger. But if you don't really have bombs in there, I probably wouldn't sack the Scavenger for 2 off the top. We'll see. Definitely a difficult choice for them, they're thinking it over. And they choose not to sacrifice the Diregraph Scavenger. But the big thing making it so it is, you know, a fine play to sack the Scavenger is the fact that they have the Blood Fountain out. If it weren't for that, I think even if you have bombs in the deck, probably don't sack the Scavenger there. I should probably play this land in case I hit more card draw. I do have a little bit more just straight up card draw than I have like Blood Token card draw. Rot-Tide Gargantua. Well, if you want to get me with that, you're not sacking the Lantern Bearer. We're going to exile that. So you are not getting your +1/+1 flying on anything. I doubt they sacrifice here. They trade the 2/3 Death Toucher for one of our cards. I guess I could just bind the Gargantua and then we're in a top deck war. But they have Blood Fountain to pick up Scavenger plus Stitched Assistant. Yeah, Blood Fountain means they are at the advantage here right now, actually. I don't think I can really afford to let them Blood Fountain back a Diregraph Scavenger. Yeah, like if I Spectral Binding the Gargantua, it's still a 3/4. So yeah, this is starting to look pretty bad. Gargantua's pretty huge compared to my board state here. It's quite a big creature to deal with. Yeah, this is a problem. I probably should have just traded for Scavenger with Binding Geist last turn, because I had to also consider, like, what happens if I don't draw anything? Like, if I just draw a land, what is my plan here? And the plan is, like, I'm going to have to stop some of their damage. So, like, at this point, having top deck to land, since I'm going to end up just trading with Scavenger anyway, I should have just done it a turn earlier and gained a bit more life by doing that. Stop 2 more damage. I guess actually stop 4 more damage, because we would have the Gargantua being binded already. So that was probably a misplay there. I was banking too hard on drawing something off the top last turn. I should have made the play that's better, better even if I don't know what I'm drawing into, which obviously you never know what you're drawing into. We actually stopped 3 damage by shutting off the Archghoul, so it's better to bind the Archghoul than the Gargantua. If I bind the Gargantua, they get to attack in with 2 3-power creatures and Flamebreather's blocking nothing. If I bind the Thraben, they attack with a 5-power creature and 1-power creature. I get to block that 1-power creature. So I'm stopping all 3 damage that the Archghoul would have been doing to me instead of just 2 of the damage that Gargantua would have been doing to me. Have a combat trick here? No, just trying to sneak in an extra 1 point there. If I wanted to chump block Gargantua, I suppose. Stitched Assistant sacrifices the Archghoul for some great value here. Archghoul's ability triggers. They get to look at the top card of their library. If it's a zombie, they draw it. If not, they can throw it in the graveyard if it's just a land or something. Just a Doomed Dissenter, they toss it in the grave, and now Stitched Assistant also scries them one and draws a card in addition. Well, Wedding Invitation isn't nothing. It cycles us into the next card draw, and everything in our deck costs 6 or less, so this is functionally just whatever we would have drawn next. But with an additional damage slapped on, unfortunately we would have drawn a land next. Still not quite dead. Actually, no. They have Diregraph Scavenger in hand. We are very dead. They attack with both, block the 5/4, take 3, take an additional 2 damage from Diregraph Scavenger's ability. That just extra little bit of reach, little way to deal damage without having to attack has been quite the thorn in my side today. So we are 3-2 now. As I said after round 3, can't be incredibly unhappy no matter what happens here, but I would hate to see the 3-0 into the 0-3. Win the first 3, lose the next 3 there. So I am going to try my best to get at least one more win in here. 4-3 is where I'm very happy, because 4-3 is where you almost break even. You get close enough to breaking even that you're drafting for very cheap. So 4 and 3 or better is where I would really like to be. This hand is great in the late game. If our opponent's quite an aggressive deck, we could have some issues, but looks very good later in the game here. Now we even have Eruth to really get us started with just a boatload of card draw. Our opponent is on black and white here. Kindly Ancestor coming on out. Very, very annoying card for aggressive strategies. Luckily, we're not that aggressive, so I'm not super worried about it. But that card stacks up into a ton of life gained in most games, which can be a lot. Would I rather just draw 3 straight up or start drawing 2 a turn next turn? I have so many cards in my hand I'm going to want to just cast the turn that I draw the mana to that I'm going to wait on Eruth until I'm out of plays in hand. Because I don't really want to play Eruth and then just play a bunch of cards at random. Because she kind of does force you to just play whatever you hit at random to get full value. I would rather have the choices of everything I have lined up here. Wow. Got a lot of spice in this hand. What do we want to discard? Turn 4, hold up a Lunar Rejection, bounce the Kindly Ancestor so Rallier can't attack in either and really slow them down that way. It's possible play next turn. We could discard Eruth because we have so much card draw going on here, but we could also discard Pyrespawn because it's so much mana, or Gutter Skulker because it does come back from the grave. We could also discard Thirst for Discovery because of the amount of card draw. Really don't want to discard a land because we have a 6-drop in hand, but at the same time we still have 4 lands if we keep one of these, and plenty more card draw to hit the next one. Yeah, I'll discard the land there. We draw another Kessig Flamebreather. That is pretty nice. So we could just cast Gutter Skulker, and then they can't attack with Kindly Ancestor anymore unless they kill our Gutter Skulker. It's pretty nice. I think I'll go for that here. They do kill the Gutter Skulker. So we are taking 3 from Militia Rallier here. Gonna kill Flamebreather? I wouldn't be that sad. Flamebreather doesn't really matter against an opponent with lifelink. We're not really going to win with 1 chip damage every turn. So Flamebreathers are definitely much less important in this matchup than I think any other matchup we've played so far today. 3/3 Flyer can block Ancestor if it doesn't get killed. Eruth can block either of them, but doesn't
threaten to kill anything on blocks, so I don't love Eruth here. Yeah, I think I'm just going to cast the Cruel Witness. I probably should have discarded, like, Thirst for Discovery, Pyre Spawn here, so we could definitely have the 5 mana here at least. If we had the Flame Breather in hand, I think we would have easily discarded Thirst Flame Breather. Alright, well, show me what nonsense you're doing this time. Piercing Light. Alright, so they do trade. So that whittles their board down to just a Militia Rallier, and Militia Rallier cannot attack alone. So now they have no way to get damage in right now, which is very nice. Unless they do have another creature in hand to play post-combat. They do. Markov Purifier it is. Well, I would really like to hit a land, and I would also not like to get attacked next turn, so I think I'm just going to bounce their Purifier here, see if we can top deck a land to play one during our turn. That shuts off the Rallier attack next turn. Nope. Definitely getting punished very hard for discarding that land earlier. Thalia. Oh god, no. One of the best cards in the set against our deck. That being said, our hand is pretty much every creature in our deck, so I'm actually not hosed that hard by it here. Kind of like playing more creatures, because a 2/4 plus a 1/3, that is well over enough to block Thalia well. And Militia Rallier can't attack alone, so if they want to attack with Militia Rallier, they're forced to attack with Thalia. And if we have 2 high toughness creatures, any Thalia attacks are going to be very bad for them. Which means any attacks, period, are going to be very bad for them. So pretty big fan of just dumping out 2 high toughness creatures here. If Eruth draws removal, I'll be pretty fine with that, because our hand is just loaded with more things to play and more card draw, since we didn't discard that earlier when we probably should have. So Eruth is really not necessary. Alright, and Heron Blessed Geist now. Lantern of the Lost is the hit. Not great, but we hit a land, so we'll do that for sure. Land 6-drop seems like what I would be interested in. We can exile their Kindly Ancestor here, which is not horrible. I guess this only costs 2 mana, so we can cast a Cruel Witness so we can trade with their flyer and then have a Lantern of the Lost on the board to exile the Heron Blessed Geist from their grave. But it does cost mana to do that, yeah. Because of Thalia's tax ability, if it weren't for Thalia's tax ability, we could cast Cruel Witness, play Lantern for 1, and still have the 1 mana up to exile the Geist from their grave. But we can't actually do that anymore. Four mana to use, they get 2 1/1s, 2 1/1 flyers. I do really want to be able to block this flyer, because I don't want them to just have a 3/3 lifelink flyer. So I definitely like exiling the Kindly Ancestor from their grave, and if I'm going to do that, I have to cast something that costs 4 or less. I would much rather cast the 3/3 flyer than another draw spell here. Draw spell is just really not what we're looking for. So if I'm on the Lantern of the Lost plan anyway, we'll play the flyer. Markov Purifier is out. Griff Rider to go alongside the Heron Blessed Geist. And because they didn't just go for the cash on the Geist that turn, that means that we can just Lantern of the Lost in response whenever they try to exile it from their grave. So that is very nice. So 4 mana up after this Binding Geist here. Probably supposed to just cast everything we hit off of Eruth. And then maybe we mill our whole deck and then just protect Eruth at all costs. We'll find out. It's going to be an interesting one. I'm not so sure this is working out for us, but something's happening. That's for sure. They gonna crack the Gutter Skulker here to get that blood token? No, an Erstwald Shield Basher. Oh, it's a thirst for discovery now. Wait a second. Oh no! Oh no, I don't think I've ever gotten myself this bad in this format before. I'm about to exile 6 cards, and I can't play them this turn. Oh no, and then I have to discard 2 cards? Oh my god, no. I can't stop casting it, it's already on the stack. Oh, I have to take that. I have to just take that into my... Oh. Oh god. Oh. Alright, that's a way to lose a draft right there. Good gravy. My soul hurts. I mean, at least there was a bunch of lands anyway. We did hit a Braid and a Bolt, but... Woo! Reading the card explains the card. We were in a rough position already in this matchup. Life gain just shutting off our Flame Breather strats and our opponent having enough flyers to shut off pretty much our only win con. I think we were pretty unlikely to win this game in the long run, but I just made it a stone cold 0% chance there. Ow. This is pretty easy block here. Get the Binding Geists going. You know, at this point against Black-White Life Gain with 10 cards in my deck, I know that I don't have enough power in this deck, don't have enough late game plays or big plays period to win this game, no matter what happens from this point on, so I am going to go ahead and scoop them up here. Go for the embarrassment scoop, I should have done that earlier. But my deck doesn't have any way to win this game from this point. We had a shot if we played very well. If we played very, very well in this matchup, because it's already a pretty terrible matchup. But I just went out and decided to do the exact opposite of that. So at least, you know, we get those plays out of the way before the big events, before the Arena Draft Open this weekend, before the Invitational Qualifier next weekend. So now I know for the future when I play Eruth, if I'm playing Eruth in a deck with more card draw, to be very certain that I have read Eruth. Oh my god, yeah, that is not good with Thirst for Discovery, that is for sure. Got ourselves pretty bad there, but 3-3. I think a 3-3 is a very reasonable record for this deck. This deck, again, the biggest fault in the deck is the lack of big, powerful win cons, as we saw really, really come into play in that last matchup. Again, I think that last matchup was pretty bad, even if I didn't misplay, simply because against a bunch of life gain, our deck is going to find it really difficult to win, because one of our biggest ways is chipping our opponent for somewhere between 5 to 10 damage with a Flame Breather. That way, our evasive threats like Cruel Witness can just kill them a little bit faster. And when our opponent has a bunch of life gain in their deck, being a white-black life gain deck, those kinds of win cons are much, much worse, because they're the kind of win cons that are just trying to chip away at your opponent without really regarding their board state. Just doing a little bit of damage here and there until your opponent's out of the game. Lifelink forces you to pay attention to your opponent's board state and get the better board position, because if you don't, if you're just racing each other all the time, they're consistently just gaining back all the life that you've dealt to them. So you really, against a lifelink kind of deck, or a deck with a lot of life gain, you have to have the better board position. You have to get into that better position, and our deck is pretty incapable of that. Just pretty small creatures overall. That's kind of what the double Pyre Spawn is in here for, so that I have at least a little bit of that going on, but obviously did not completely pan out for us in the end. Other than that, the other matches that we lost, one of them was really close against that, I think the blue-black deck. That was a really close one. I think we just made some misplays there. Probably could have won that one. Then I don't remember the other loss, because my memory is mush and my brain does not work. But overall, pretty fun deck. Were there any overperformers or underperformers here? I mean, the Flame Breathers and the Cruel Witnesses were the biggest cards in the deck. Massively good stuff. Gutter Skulker really didn't work too well in this deck. I think I took this over a Flame Breather, so if I didn't wheel that Flame Breather, it might have been better to just have a 4th Flame Breather, to be honest. Because it just doesn't work super well here. But it did help us find lethal in 1 or 2 of the games that we did win, so actually might have been better. Binding Geist was fine. Eruth wasn't as good as I expected, but a lot of that is because of the massive misplay with Eruth there. Obviously, now we know for sure Eruth combos very poorly with other card draw, and we have a lot of other card draw. So I think Eruth is actually not super good in the way that our deck ended up being. Eruth at her absolute best when you're a pretty aggressive deck and you can use all those cards really quickly to finish your opponent off. I guess the other issue with Eruth is she was also drawn in the matchup that's just the worst for Eruth. Like any matchup where we have 2 Flame Breathers out and then have an Eruth out as well, she's actually just going to be insane because then we're just dropping our Ancestral Angers and Bolts and Lanterns that we hit off of Eruth. So, like, if our opponent isn't gaining life, I do think Eruth is good in this deck with triple Flame Breather. Like, she does just start really cashing in for a lot of these cheap spells, a lot of quick damage in the early game. So I think our deck is aggressive enough probably for Eruth. It's just that the time that we had her there was not the ideal time, not the ideal matchup. So I don't want to just completely write Eruth off here, even though she did play pretty poorly. A lot of that was matchup considerations as well. Pyrespawn wasn't great, but that's to be expected. Pyrespawn's already pretty filler, just filling a role that our deck doesn't really have here. So overall, a fine deck. I think a 3-3 is about what it deserves, so I will take that to the bank, grab our 1,000 gems, 2 packs, and get out of here. So again, if you are interested in watching some more Magic Arena gameplay, especially limited, stick around on the channel. We've got some big events coming up. This weekend, I will be playing day 1 of the Draft Arena Open. And hopefully, fingers crossed, if I do well in that, we'll be playing day 2 of the Arena Open. But no confirmation on that. Obviously, I have to 7-win the first day, which is a 5,000 gems entry fee. So I'm only going to try it the one time. So if I don't 7-0, then we'll just have day 1 of the event. But we'll see. We will have more competitive Magic in the future after that, though. The couple weekends after that, we have, again, the Draft Invitational Qualifier from being Mythic last month. I guess I'll show off the little invitation there, the Mythic Qualifier there. That will be coming up. So some big stuff on the horizon. Other than that, I think Arena Cube Draft is coming back again at some point. They haven't officially announced, but there was a picture of it when they announced their new standard format that isn't standard, that I already forgot the name of. Oh, Alchemy or whatever. So it looked like along with the Alchemy format, they're bringing back Arena Cube Draft. So whenever that happens, we'll have tons of those drafts available as well. But other than that, the giant outro out of the way, I just want to thank you all again so much for watching. Thank you for all of the support over this last year. If you want to see more videos, stick around on the channel because I will be back again very soon with some more Magic Arena.